Hello and welcome to Film Companion South. This is Ask PR on Alaipayuthey, which completes 20 years. You don't do something for a while and you get a little rusty. So it's almost like I'm making this video it's almost like making a first video after a very long time. And when I see some of the props that I have, like this sterilizing lotion bottle, I mean, it really feels weird. But anyway, on with the show. So let's talk about Alaipayuthey. It doesn't feel like 20 years. I remember I was in the US when I saw it. I was working there in a very different kind of job, not doing what I'm doing today. And yeah, it was really, really fun watching it. I think it's always special when you watch an Indian movie out of India. With an Indian audience, because along with the movie experience itself, there is this whole feeling of being cooped up with a whole bunch of people that are Indian, and like it's almost like being back home for just 2.5 hours, and I think that really adds to the experience of watching the movie. So anyway, on with the Ask BR. Madhavan says, do you think this film holds up today, and would the film not have worked without these two actors? I'll tell you something. I have not been the biggest fan of this film among the so-called romantic trilogy of Ratnam, because I don't know why they call it trilogy, because there's also Gitanjali, which is a romantic movie, but somehow people speak of it as a trilogy, which is basically Maunaragam, Alaipayuthey and OK Kanmani, separated by roughly a period of 15 years. I mean, I'm from the Maunaragam generation, so I prefer that to Alaipayuthey, but I also prefer OK Kanmani to Alaipayuthey for the simple reason that the relationships are developed better. So, and this is not a problem that happened because of some mistake. It's what happens is when you start a story in the present and you're going back for very, very small flashbacks, as in you're like each scene, like a huge love story, which would have been developed over a period of 10 or 15 minutes, is now given one scene, right? It's now given like a little flash. So when the entire movie is structured like that, like a series of incremental memories of this man, you naturally lose the cohesiveness that you build in a love story, where you have, let's say in Maunaragam, you have like 5 scenes of Revati and Karthik together. Even in that small flashback, you're able to see an arc of the relationship. Similarly, in OK Kanmani, they meet in church and they're texting each other, and that meet cute happens, and it happens very quickly. So you're able to hold on to these people for a little longer, whereas the very structure of this film of Alaipayuthey makes it a little difficult to hold on to. So it is completely up to the charm of Madhavan to sell this movie, and because he's the charmer, right? And I think he does that wonderfully for a first film. I mean, I think he grew to be a much better actor later, but I think that charm aspect is like full wattage here, and I think he's wonderful. Shalini is not bad. I mean, she's good, but I've always wondered what would have been if Simran had played this role, because I thought Madhavan and Simran were spectacular together in Kanathil Mudamital, which came like a few years later. The thing about Shalini is that she's not bad, but I've never found her a very utterly convincing actress, because she always seems to be holding back something, whereas Simran is one of those people who just powers through a role and gives it her all. So I've always wondered what would she have done in this role. Usha Potter says, what do you make of the flashbacks cutting into the present scenes? Was it distracting or added another layer to the movie? Actually, there are not many flashbacks if you look at it. The movie starts with him going towards the Nungambakam train station, and then he kind of goes into one long flashback that lasts about 40 minutes, and then you come back to the present where he's making some calls, and you get the second long flashback. So it's not like really a huge thing. The really interesting thing about this screenplay is that the flashbacks themselves are like little incremental memory bits. So it's like quick little scenes as opposed to long drawn scenes, right? It's like we are supposed to buy a lot of the stuff that happens, and I think that's what is interesting as a concept, as a conceit. I think that cuts a bit into at least my buying of this relationship, because there's a lot of this time this seems especially in the second half, when it comes to things like Shalini suspecting Madhavan of loving somebody else. I've always felt that if she can see across a train passing, if she can see Madhavan and recognize him, couldn't she have recognized her sister as well? Or maybe the sister's face was hidden or whatever. But also the trust element, it's like, this guy, you've loved this guy, you've married this guy, and you see him hugging somebody. She could be anybody, and you immediately jump to the conclusion that he's having an affair. I've never bought this. I didn't buy this the first time I saw this film. I've seen the film many times after that. I have never bought this dramatic device at all. And yes, agreed, they have little fights. So the thing is, had it been a conventional movie, maybe the scene would have been preceded by like a real proper arc. But because here we are getting little memory bits of Madhavan, I think some of the more dramatic elements don't build as cohesively as the lighter moments, which are really charming, and they are fantastic. Just Eddie says, I've always loved the way Arvind Swamy and Khushbu's relationship was used to open the eyes of Karthik. The same could be said of that of Prakash Raj and Leela Samson playing an older couple in OK Kanmani. Is this Mani Ratnam's way of imparting an ideology message in his movies, or is it just done for the sake of story beats? No, I think in this film, just like OK Kanmani, it's not just the Arvind Swamy and Khushbu bit, but also the Aragam Perumal and his wife Nitya, the Mallu guys, right? He has this very important dialogue in this movie, which is கல்யாணத்துக்கு முன்னாடி யாரு காதல் வந்து பூ மாதிரி, கல்யாணத்துக்கு அப்புறம் வர relationship வந்து வேர் மாதிரி. It's stronger, earlier it's just like a flower, but now it takes root. So I think both these couples, these older couples, the strength of their love gives like Madhavan a kind of a lesson, not necessarily like a school teacher kind of lesson, but it just tells him, about how perspective, especially Arvind Swamy and Khushbu, because it's like, wow, my wife has done this horrible thing, and yet I'm taking the blame for it, and I'm covering it up, and I'm saying I'm going to give myself up, and that really shows the depth of his love for his wife and his relationship. So I think that really does a number on Madhavan, and I think what Mani Ratnam basically did with the Leela Samson and Prakash Raj characters in OK Kanmani was to expand this relationship into a much bigger, like a subplot, almost like a parallel plot. And I think that's why I like OK Kanmani a lot more, because it's between two couples and we constantly keep seeing the contrast between them, and it's beautiful for me. I really like, it's like, yes, it's a light film, but it's like the same thing has been done much more convincingly for me in OK Kanmani, I feel. Weekend Chef says, in the climax scenes at the hospital, many scenes between the dialogues are shown in slow motion. It's kind of distracting when I rewatch it now. Like Maddie and Arvind are talking, and then Khushbu confesses she was driving. Maddie turns his head towards Khushbu, and this is such a slow motion shot, and many such scenes. How do you feel about it? What do you think was the intention for it there? I don't think there was anything more than just the fact that the portion needed to be slowed down a bit, because your whole movie you've been searching for this person, and finally you've come to this place and you found her, but she's in a coma. So your life kind of is in a like hanging in the balance kind of thing, right? You don't know what to do, and I think that's the sense that we get there, that all this confusion is happening there. In a way, the mystery has been solved as to where this person is, where Shakti is, but then this is even worse, because at least when he did not know where she was, this wasn't happening. See, the thing is also the present day portions, even when you watch the way he's searching for the train and it transitions to the older portions, there's a bit of like the slowing down kind of thing that happens, and that's what's continued right at the end. Jaykumar R says, Mani Ratnam's love stories are one of his stronger areas. The audience have always found them very relatable. My mom told me about the effect Agni Natchatram had on their generation, and what Alaipayuthey did to youngsters at that time is something everyone knows. And with OKK, I saw the effect it had on my generation myself. How do you think Mani Ratnam attains this effect? The man has clearly aged, but his story is not a bit. Would love to know how you think he does this. I think it's basically just being open to how people think. Just because you yourself are of a certain age, it doesn't mean that your thought process has aged or the way you write has aged, right? It's because you are looking at how people behave. You're watching movies about them. You're watching how younger people make movies. You're watching people from your own families, even if maybe your son, maybe your nephew, your niece, how they're behaving and how they are doing things, how they're conducting relationships. I know Mani Ratnam's love stories get a lot of traction for this. They get a lot of praise for this being realistic. But I've always found, even in either Ita, I've always found the Siddharth Trisha portions very beautiful and romantic, because I really like that relationship and how it develops, even though that is technically not one of his love stories. I really liked how he does that. So I think it's just, the word you use is just right. It's relatable, because he kind of doesn't get into the zone. Like, let me tell you about Kushi, right? There is this whole conflict that happens because you're gazing at somebody's hip and that person gets a little annoyed about that. Now, that is a little contrived and a cinematic thing, right? Whereas if your conflict is coming about because of smaller things, like in OK Kanmani, which is really, I've learned to like it a lot more than the first time that I saw it, because the first time I saw it, I thought it was a little lightweight for my taste. But then I've seen, like, the more number of times I see it, it's actually grown on me. I really like the fact that the conflict is coming about because these two guys decided that they wanted a casual relationship till they went their separate ways. And what happens if that feeling intensifies and you want both the way that you wanted to go earlier. You don't want to leave that either, and you don't want the relationship to be ended either. That's a very real thing, right? That many of us face that kind of situation. So it's not like a cinematic contrivance. It's a very real thing that happens. So I think that's what it is. It's real, it's relatable, and that's why these love stories are so popular. Ram Prasad Pitta says, I've always found Alaipayuthey a sad movie. Every time the scenes from the past sets you to a feel-good mood, it gets frozen, zoomed out, toned with a sepia bluish tint with a slow BGM. These scenes are always followed by Karthik searching for Shakti in the present. What do you think the makers of the movie intended to do with such a screenplay? Was it intentional to keep the audience emotion low throughout? I have never found this a sad movie as such, but yes, I have found this a tricky film in the sense that, like, let's compare this with Roja, right? Roja builds a relationship up to the middle point, and then it tells you that the husband goes missing, and then the wife has to search for the husband. Whereas in this movie, at the beginning, the husband finds that the wife is missing. So it's actually a mystery in the form of a relationship drama. Where is this wife? What could she be doing? Why isn't she at home? It's like a missing person drama. And the fact, it kind of correlates with the fact that the Shakti that he once knew and the Karthik that she once knew have themselves gone missing a bit in the course of the relationship. So that means that mystery of how people obviously change in relationships. So it's kind of getting back to the person that they fell in love with, and that's what the end of the movie is, where they're repeating dialogues from the earlier portion of the courtship, which had kind of vanished a bit during the marriage. So that is what the whole movie is about. So despite the fact that it's very light and charming in many places, it is actually I won't call it a serious movie as such, but it's definitely a heavy movie in what it tries to accomplish. Like, it starts off light, it gets heavy, and then it ends up like where they find each other and they find the people that they fell in love with at the end by repeating those lines from earlier. So I think, yeah, that's the arc of the whole thing. Vishnu Shantan says, Mani Ratnam has said in your book Conversations with Mani Ratnam that Alaipayuthey was made in the thought of what if the happy ending of romantic relationships turning into a happy marriage was not exactly the end of the couple's love journey, which was the case back then. And he wanted to explore more on the afterlife of the marriage with its burdens. But the movie, after 20 years, is mostly being celebrated for the romance before marriage and how beautifully bloomed. Did Mani Ratnam's idea behind making this movie carry forward and age this movie well in the direction that he thought before creating? Karthik was better in aging in the right direction, I feel. P.S. I truly love the movie and its notion of love, and yes, I feel it didn't age for what it should have. Films that are heavier, more dramatic, age better than films that are lighter, romantic films, because lighter films are of their time, and I think that they age a little because the cuteness or whatever we liked at that particular point of time. Today, the definition of cuteness is a little different. So I think movies that are heavier, like Karthik, will age better. Thank you for saying that, because I do like that movie, and maybe you're the second person who likes the movie as well. But I think what a director wants to do and what the audience takes away are not necessarily the same thing, which is why I always feel that we should, as much as I'm interested in knowing what Mani Ratnam thought of while he was making the movie, that is of academic interest, because I'm curious about his mind, the way it works, what he was trying to do. But at the end of the day, what I'm watching is what is the movie projected in front of me, and whatever I take away from it is what it is. So if the audience is taking away the light scenes and saying I'm watching a light romance, then you can't prevent that from happening. I myself do not see this as a very light romance. I see this as a relationship movie, a relationship drama containing comic parts, light, charming parts, yes, but not necessarily a light romance. It's not that at all. There are light romantic portions, yes, but the movie itself is not a light romance. Natesh Hariharan says, Alaipayuthey is a film that talks more about its female lead Shakti than Karthik. Take, for instance, it talks about the issues faced by Shakti's family after marriage, but doesn't show us what Karthik's family undergoes after the marriage. Yeah, that's natural, right? Because she's the one who's more attached to her family. Karthik, Aramatlende, he's very He's very like, okay, you know what, I can just chuck my family and come here. And Shakti even says something like, நாளைக்கு இந்த பொண்ணுக்காக அப்பா அம்மா விட்டு வந்துருவேன், நாளைக்கு இன்னொரு பொண்ணுக்காக விட மாட்டேன் என்ன நிச்சயம் kind of thing. So from the beginning it's shown that he's not really like that kind of attached to his family. So there's not much drama there. So the drama naturally focuses on Shakti's side of the family. Anu Venu says, if the accident hadn't happened, would Shakti and Karthik have ever reconciled? Also, do you think their first fight was over something trivial and not one that can shake up a new marriage? See, we are seeing Karthik's memories, right? So he's remembering some of the stuff, and it's not necessary that like the first fight is trivial, and it's not that is not really shaking up the new marriage, because it's really just her circling a day on the calendar and saying, that this is what she's going to do. The thing that really shakes up the marriage is the fact that her father dies, and they could have gone a day earlier and made him happy, but because of Karthik's pidivadam, they could not go there, and that's what really shakes up the marriage. Because on the one hand, he's also feeling guilty about the fact that, wow, I could have taken her yesterday when she wanted me to take her to her dad. And she probably, there's a small part of her that's feeling guilty about the whole thing, and maybe even angry and resentful about Karthik about this whole thing, and they don't talk about it, and that's why that's really what the problem is, that kind of creates the rift between them. Badrinath says, if Alaipayuthey is released now, do you think some of your colleagues, fellow critics, will spare Madhavan going after Shalini episodes in the early part of the film? Would it amount to stalking? Heroine approving it and okay with it, but the critics aren't okay. No, I don't know about other critics, but at least I have never had a problem with this initial mating ritual, because it's part of any kind of, you have to show your interest and see if the other person is interested. Otherwise, people are just going to exist in separate worlds and not even know that they're going to come together. So the thing is, Karthik and Shakti start kind of flirting right during the Yaro Yarodi portion in the marriage, that song. And so when the tali is being tied, note that the camera focuses on Shakti and Karthik looking at each other. So there is clearly an interest that is established. Only after that interest is established visually does Karthik start like getting obsessed with her and starts chasing her and stuff like that. And note one thing, when Shalini says இது சரி வராது, something like that, Karthik is okay with it. He goes back to his life. He's giving her up. He's playing basketball. She's the one who's pining for him. He's opening up that new computer, that big dabba computer, and installing it for his office ability, whatever. And he's gone on with his life. It's only when that kid dials that number and gives it to him, and he contacts Shakti again, that she comes back in his life. So I think he's perfectly okay. He went after this person after there was a mutual interest, and then went back to her again after that phone call. So I don't think this is kind of stalking at all. Karivardhan Tinkupara says, do you think Alaipayuthey was more a people pleaser than a Mani Ratnam film? I feel it coming after Iruvar and Dil say Alaipayuthey was made to be an easily digestible movie to please people with simple screenplay, melodrama and the standard narration compared to Iruvar. I don't think it is that way. It seems that way because it's lightweight, but I don't think Mani Ratnam puts any less effort in his lighter films than his heavier films. Yes, agreed. I don't think I far prefer Dil Se to this film. I think that's a much better film. It has much better performances, and the whole thing comes together beautifully. I also think it has much better music, but with this film, he could have told it linearly, but they break it. See, that's what it is. He sets up a challenge for every film. Now, whether the challenge works or not is for us to decide depending on the individual film, but he never takes a movie saying, I'm just going to make one people pleaser. It's not that at all. Like at the beginning, let's take Endran Punnagai, right? Karthik is smiling. He could be smiling for anything, but it's only after we see the movie that we realize that he's smiling because he's got that $1 million contract in the US, and plus he's joined, he's reunited Shakti's sister and that person she was supposed to be married. So that Endran Punnagai is actually something like, okay, wow, I've done all this stuff and I'm coming here. Whereas when we first see the movie, it's just like a handsome man on a bike smiling, and that works as well. That's what these things are. It's like these decisions that are taken to kind of make, maybe the story is simple, but the screenplay is definitely not a simple one, and the moments that are chosen are definitely not easy. Again, let me make the difference. Just because all this is done, it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to like the movie. But all I'm saying is that it is not some lazily made movie. You may still not like the movie for whatever reasons, but there has never been a Mani Ratnam film that has been lazily made and just said, oh, I made 2 tough films, let me just give this audience whatever they want and kind of a thing. So no, it's more likable because there's a charming Madhavan, the Shalini, that relatable problems, all those things are happening, but it doesn't mean it's simpler or a deliberate people pleaser in any kind of way. Dattu says, what if Ganapati and Bhavani of OK Kanmani were played by Madhavan and Shalini with the same characters as in Alaipayuthey? Would it have made more sense in depicting the contrast of love in those and these days? Head injury of Shakti could be the reason for Alzheimer's. See, this is why I love the Ask VR, because you always get this one question that's amazing. Yes, what if Shakti's head injury is the cause for Bhavani, that is the Leela Samson character's Alzheimer's in OK Kanmani? Yeah, I would have loved to see the same characters being played as older, but I really think they needed a convincingly older, aged kind of thing, because Madhavan and Shalini would have still been in their 40s. I think they needed somebody in their 50s or 60s to kind of really bring that difference between old, deep-rooted love versus thing. I don't think Shalini would have been very convincing with old age makeup, and even Madhavan would not have been very convincing with old age, because it requires a certain, like, to be in a certain stage in life, and I don't think this would have been good casting, but that's a great suggestion. I mean, like, wow, this leading to that, that's amazing, because I've always thought like the older couple in this are Arvind Swamy and Khushbu are kind of the precursors to Bhavani and Ganapati in OK Kanmani, but this is like this brand new thing and it's amazing. Thank you so much for that. Pranavan Ramachandran says, I don't have a question, more of a request really. Could you look into the camera and deliver the now in a Virumbala dialogue? Cheers. I am no actor, and I'm going to try and do this just because you asked me and just because I'm doing this for Film Companion. But first, I think I have to make myself look a little bit younger and try to look a little bit cooler. So I'm going to do this horrible, idiotic thing. Oh, wait. Maybe this is better. So, to my Film Companion South viewers, நான் உங்களை விரும்புகிறேன்னு சொல்லலை, உங்களை ஆசைப்படுறேன்னு சொல்லலை, ஆனால் இதெல்லாம் நிஜமாக நடந்துருமோன்னு பயமாக இருக்குது. Okay? Thanks so much for watching Ask BR, and I really hope all of you are staying safe, and these are worrying times, because at some point I worry if what I'm doing is too much. It's like, oh my god, washing this hand constantly, are we like overreacting to something? Some of the things that we do seem so stupid, because you're getting groceries and then you're wiping it down, and you know, like you're leaving it out for 2 days or 3 days and saying the COVID virus will die. But are we overreacting? I don't know, but in this whole case, it's so strange that I think it's a better safe than sorry situation. So stay locked in, stay safe. As of this recording, I do think the extension is, the lockdown is going to be extended. So it means 2 more weeks for all of us locked in. And luckily for me, I have a job that I can do from home, and which I am doing from home. You know, you might have seen some of the stuff that I've written, but to those of you who have not been able to do stuff because yours is a more of an on-site kind of job, just hang in there, stay sane is always what I say, because sometimes when there's too much time on your hands, you know, there's like, oh, some of us are able to treat it like a vacation, but I always find that, you know, I'm a kind of a workaholic, so I love work in that sense. You know, whenever I'm away from work for 2 weeks or more, the first 2 weeks are great on a vacation, but more than that, I start getting very antsy, and I'm like, wow, I need to get back and do something. I don't know if some of you are like that. I hope that you are finding ways to keep sane. I know a lot of people saying things like learn a new skill, learn a language, whatever. I'm saying even if you don't go to that extent, at least I hope you're kind of doing stuff that keeps you occupied. So stay safe, keep watching Film Companion South, keep reading Film Companion South, and hopefully we'll get over this soon and see you on the other side. My love and regards to all of you. Take care.